how is it an HR function? It sounds like it, but can you give us more insight, more perspective to how it's HR that will be the driving force behind DEI?
So interestingly, HR can be the driver, but DEI is every single person's responsibility, from leadership, from the top leadership across all levels of leadership, and every single employee. You find that you might have HR having done their part, and I'll speak to the role of HR, but I wanted to put out there that HR can drive, but everyone owns that responsibility because it's a collaborative effort to build an organization that is absolutely diverse, absolutely inclusive, equitable, and drives a sense of belonging, would involve everybody. And let me tell you why. If we say, for example, we have Sterling Embrace. I was speaking to people who are differently abled the other time, and Sterling Embrace is part of what we have that speaks to that, to ensure that we have that representation of different people who are differently abled within our organization. We see them for the talent that they can bring, and we don't discriminate against them, right? So we can, if we have that, so we have done our part in bringing those people into the organization. And then if they work with team members or line managers that have not keyed into the concept of DEI, there will still be a problem, because you can say HR has done their work, but they're still in an organization that is not helping them feel included. So we can say we're diverse, but are we equitable? Are people feeling included? Do they have a sense of belonging in their smaller pods, in their teams, in their units, in their divisions? It has to trickle down. Every single person in the room has to be able to key into that concept before we can be successful at driving that campaign. But I know that, we're doing a great work. We, as a people, as an organization, we've been able to, when we say the culture that we've built, we've been able to pass down that mindset, that DNA, that sense of who we are as a people. So as much as HR drives things, we have employees within the organization that gets it. So we don't have to do so much in trying to. So naturally, on the surface, we have a culture and organization where everyone is part of what is driving that, but it needs to be said. We need to remind ourselves to say, when we're doing these things, it's not HR's job. It's everybody's responsibility to drive this.
Okay, I feel like that is very apt. Thinking about it, it's true. HR can only do so much. HR cannot come into every single team and say, oh, all of you must abide to DEI. It's like I said, it has to be a community or communal purpose. Everybody has to understand it so that it can actually work. If only HR understands it and HR brings the talent in and the team makes the talent feel uncomfortable because maybe they're differently abled, or because they have a learning disability or something of some sort, right? The responsibility is now to be picked up by members of the team to make sure that, oh, this person feels like they are exactly like myself. They don't need to feel like they cannot do this thing because of such and such and such. Your abilities are not, or the limits of your abilities are not, there's no fine line drawn. Like, oh no, this person cannot do this because he's differently abled. That would not apply, and that is not definitely encouraged. So I really understand that, and I'm glad that I get to speak to you about this, because there are questions that I have, and I'm sure you're the right person to answer these questions, and I'm sure these are questions that people also have on their mind. Now that we've established how much DEI means and what it means, the true value of DEI, we have to ask ourselves, and we have to come to a point where we ask ourselves, is this thing actually necessary? What is the real value of not upholding DEI? In real time, what is the disadvantage? What do we lose by not actually upholding DEI?
So you notice that I'm taking a pause because I'm reflecting. It's not something we should even imagine. So people have stories. I mentioned I have I mean, community
Yes.
of people, HR people, career people, and I do these things for impact. I hear lots of stories. They're saddening, right? That we have organizations like that
Mm.
where people experience these things. And every day I just, I'm glad, I'm grateful for the kind of organization that I work in, that I work for. There are organizations that I'm not sure how people don't realize that this is even a fundamental human right. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not even trying to be DEI savvy. You just need to basically let people feel like I'm a human being.
Mm.
I'll give you an example. When I hear stories like people saying, I got fired from my job because I got pregnant. So I wonder, it's a biological phenomenon. As a
Mm.
woman, you're
You
of
can get pregnant.
it's saddening when I think about it. So you hear stories, I hear some people in their archaic mind. I don't even know if it's archaic, it's just borderline demonic. When you say that, you don't like to hire women because women would always get pregnant and then they'll always have to go on maternity leave. And then I wonder, did a woman not give birth to you? I don't understand. Are you not born of a woman? Are you not married to a woman? So I just, we have a long way to go because
Mm.
yes, organizations like Sterling have cracked the code. We are
Yes.
doing all we can. We're doing amazing. I mean, Sterling Bank has one great place to work for the last 7 years. Amazing. I mean, we have cracked that code. We have, one that we have been able to achieve that.
Yeah.
But you see that a lot of organizations are still way, way behind.
Behind.
And that's because the mentality of a lot of people, would I say Nigerians? The mentality of a lot of people in positions of power still feel that no, they still have that mindset of the workplace is for men. And when we see a lot of conversations around IWD, International Women's Day, International Day of the Girl Child, it is to keep on fostering the fact that women deserve rights. I deserve the right to a job as much as I deserve the right to build a family. I don't have to I don't
You
have
don't
to
have to
trade
choose.
one
Yeah.
for the other. I don't
Yeah.
have to choose between one and the other. I'm married with 3 children, and I'm grateful that in the last 13 years of my career, I've not had to leave my job because I was pregnant or I had to have a baby. I mean, it's a testimony, but not a lot of people are, favored or, lucky to have that. So it's a saddening when we think of what would we rather be doing if we were not embracing DEI. A lot of people will suffer. People who are differently abled wouldn't have the means of livelihood. People who are women or who need to build families have to be relegated to being at home, not having something to do. So when you think about things like maternity leave, it's like that basic understanding that as a woman, you would have to make sacrifices to birth into the world, to build a family.
Yes.
And then we want to support you. When you think of things like the momship program, where we know that some other organizations have so frustrated their ladies to the point where they had to choose between childbearing and working. And because of that, 3, 4, 5 years, they're at home, not doing anything. It's so noble that Sterling is thinking of doing that, reaching out to such category of women that have sort of been relegated to not having something to do because of maybe the organizations they worked for. So it is a lot of struggle for people who do not have that opportunity to work in such organizations. And it's a basic thing that we should all embrace as humans. That sense of empathy, that sense of compassion for the other person's struggle. It is, let's even leave DI. It is your basic sense of humanity. And then I wonder, where is your humanity? When you say this person does not fit into our space because they have disabilities, what about the abilities? What about the value that they can bring to the table? Find something for them. It is that basic sense of humanity. So when you think about what would our world be like, when we don't embrace a lot of people will be, and many times, so let's speak about the differently abled people. They're not in that position of their own doing or their own choice.
Yes, exactly.
So they came into the world and found out they were like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of NGOs and organizations that focus on giving those people an opportunity. God bless them.
Mm-hmm.
Organizations like Sterling that is intentional about bringing these people into the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
God bless them. And when you think about women, so we have the Bloom Network
Okay.
that is a women network focus. It's a major driver of DEI, one of the major pillars of DEI. So it's our employee resource group for women, Sterling Women, Alt Women, women within the Sterling Financial Holding Company. Our Bloom Network is 5 years old, and it's interesting, the amazing stuff that we've done. And one of the major campaigns, one of the major messaging we're driving is give women opportunities in leadership. And we see that from where we're coming from in the last 5 years to where we are now, we've made a lot of progress. We celebrate our wins. We're constantly tracking our data, and we're, tracking that, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what percentage of women do we have in leadership? Different levels of leadership, middle management, senior management, and even executive management. And it's interesting that we celebrated our first female ED. It's a win for us at the Bloom Network. We had our first female ED at the Alt Bank earlier in the year. And then we had our first female ED in Sterling Bank, just a few weeks ago. So it's a win. It's something to celebrate. The fact that what we are driving at the Bloom Network is working. Also, we just concluded International Day of the Girl Child. And then we visited a secondary school to give to the girls, to speak to them. We are just driving that campaign internally and externally, and we're making women feel like they matter, they are valued, they have something in them to give to the workforce, they have something in them to give their communities, to give the society, and they deserve a chance to be heard. The theme of International Day of the Girl Child this year was Vision for the Future. And when we went to that school, we were speaking to them and reminding them that they've got power, that they've got the ability to dream and become. And we spoke to them about ways, guidelines, how they can pen down their dreams, get the right support, give, build up their energy with right affirmations. We gave them an affirmations card that had 5 affirmations on a daily basis, Monday to Sunday. That's 35. There's no way you won't say that to yourself every single day and you're not gingered, you're not powered, you're not energized to dream and become. So, we're just saying examples of different ways that we are intentional about these things. I've spoken to the Women Bait, I've spoken to Sterling Embrace. We also have Anchor. This is on the Sterling Bank. The men's network that speak to, because sometimes we just assume, women need to be cared for, women need to be this, men too, because sometimes we put a lot of focus on women and then we forget the men. So we have the men's network, and they also have a lot of things that they do for men and the boy child. The International Day of the Boy Child was earlier this year, and they had some stuffs that they did as well, which is so amiable and really really good to think about. So at Sterling, we're at the forefront of driving this, but it's so sad to think that some organizations can't just do the basic, and it's traumatic for the people who find themselves in those environment.
I totally agree, because if I have to, I would be so dumbfounded if somebody was upset that I got pregnant. Is that not what you want? Don't you want more people in this world? Is that not what you want? So, it's very confusing, because people, I know that things are not the best economically right now. So I know everybody's striving and thriving. We're just trying to make a living. We're trying to make our businesses profitable. I know all of that struggle is there. It's valid, but it doesn't change the fact that women have to give birth.
Create.
It's natural. I don't know how else to. It's such a difficult thing to explain, because you believe this is something everybody knows, but to find out that there are people or there are companies that are actively. I know that there are companies that actively do not take women of a certain age because they feel, she'll soon get pregnant or she'll get married.
Age.
So another thing is that I'm sure that people will question DEI, because it's almost like some people will now say, it's performative. You just want to show that, you are diverse, you are inclusive. But if you are bringing people that are diverse and inclusive and you are not getting the work done, or if the people are in truth not qualified and you're just bringing them in for the representation, what's
Hmm.
then is the point of DEI? So do you think that there is ever a point where you have to choose between representation and actually getting the work done? Do you think that's ever a thing that you have to worry about
Hmm.
when you've chosen to uphold DEI?
So we shouldn't have to choose,
Mm.
and we don't choose. There has to be a balance. So, like you said, we want an organization that is performing, that is productive. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to need talent to drive that performance
Yeah.
and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not going to get people in the room just for the sake of showing that we have that representation and they lack the skills. So, I'm going to give you an example. For Momship, which was um, the first cohorts,
Okay.
which we inducted. The journey started late last year, but the induction was this year, April. It From the data that we gathered, about 16,000, between 14,000 and 16,000 people applied,
Mm-hmm.
but there were rigorous stages in the recruitment process. We were going to accommodate a cohort of 16 people. So 16 people scaled through the final level and were inducted. So you can imagine the 0.01
Mm.
success rates,
Mm.
because the levels were rigorous. There were written interviews, assessment centers, online interviews, one-on-one interviews, panel interviews. There was a lot to just ensure that we were putting this large pool of people
Mm.
through thorough assessment to get the best of the pool. So are we demonstrating DEI? Yes. Are we getting the best talent in the room? Yes.
Yes.
Because as much as it's important to us to be diverse, equitable, inclusive, and drive a sense of belonging. We also want people who are going to add value to the organization,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because it's not a charity foundation. It's not a charity
It's not
business.
NGO.
So yes, so we are not doing it for the sake of doing it. We're doing it
Yes.
because we are giving you an opportunity. So we're giving you a platform. So I'll speak to Sterling and Brace again. There's a platform for you to be seen, but we're also going to put you through the process to ensure that you are able
Mm-hmm.
to, drive what the organization needs to scale, to be
Yeah.
successful, to be sustainable, which are the different things that are important for any serious organization that wants to,
Mm-hmm.
be successful and sustainable. So, DI is on one hand your talent and the potential that you have to deliver
Yeah.
on your target, on your goals and objective is on the other hand. But there has to be a balance, which is what we do in our
Okay.
organization.
Okay. So from what I can understand, it feels like equity pretty much explains this. So it's you're going to make sure that they still go through processes like every other person that would apply for a job.
Absolutely.
You still go through the processes, but it's an equitable process
Mm-hmm.
where it is standardized to make sure that you don't put them at a disadvantage while they're
Yeah,
applying.
absolutely.
Pretty much. So that's the where the E in DI also comes into play. So whether you think it's performative or not, there is a balance, and that balance is equity. It's bringing in a balance to make sure that nobody is on the losing side. You don't give them a task that you know clearly that they cannot execute. I hope nobody is asking anybody to jump a fence for their recruitment exercise, but let's say that there's somebody asking people to jump a fence for their recruitment exercise. You don't tell everybody to come and jump a fence when you know some people cannot jump a fence because of their physically unable to. So that will not be, it's equal, right? It's equal. If I tell everybody to jump a fence, that's equality. If I tell some people to jump a fence and I tell some people to just scale over a curb, that's unjust, right? But if I tell the people that I know can physically jump over a fence to jump over a fence, and those that cannot physically jump over a fence, if I say, okay, move from point A to point B instead, that's where equity comes into play. And that's how you strike a balance, making sure you get the best out of people, but not putting them at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You get it. You totally get it. Can I just throw in the visual representation to just explain what you said? So we watch the Olympics and watch sports and all. And when you're on is that a track? A track, yes. When athletes are about to run, you see them mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you see that if they're going to turn round the track, everyone is not on the same line. The person on 8 is forward. The person on 1 is backward because the time it takes to turn that whole track, because you are at the far end. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, that just explains that even in you're trying to race to win a race, you're trying to run to win a race, there's that understanding that you who's going to turn round at that end, you're going to turn a longer distance than the person who's turning on point 1. So you can't all be on the same line. And that's the same concept. Just to put more flesh and explain what you just said, that's the concept within organizations that are trying to be equitable.